It had been a close call. After we had dispatched the enemy combatants, we received a hail we assumed was survivors offering surrender. Instead, we got a bunch of garbled static and lost control of most of our systems. Thankfully, we had Tim. The virus is officially scrubbed clean and there are no further signs of infection, sir. I took the liberty of checking Lieutenant Babinen's suit to make certain he wasn't infected as well. Tim informed me over the comm. Thank you, Tim, that will be all, I replied. Well, not quite, sir. Admiral Heckett and Captain Reynolds want a debrief of the aliens ASAP. I nearly rolled my eyes. Can't get a moment of peace these days. Potential AI is a pretty big red flag when it comes to combatants, so their rush is understandable. We all had a pretty close brush with death, and the poor aliens must be swimming in fear chemicals right now, though. Still better to get it over with and let them relax than to drag it out any longer. We also had to get med data for them, and that was likely to be unpleasant, especially with Doc Zickler. Did they provide a list of must-asks? I asked. Of course. It's on your tablet. Shall I send for shiphead Yulina? Yes. Clear a conference room and set up an audio call with Admiral Heckett and Captain Reynolds, since they're so damned curious they can take part themselves, I said with no lack of venom in my words. All righty, Tim said with an enthusiasm he knew was annoying. I grabbed my tablet and headed to the conference room. I sat in my favorite chair and began looking over the battle data. The Omni Union was pathetic. Their shields were similar to what we use for our infantry, and their missiles were hardly space-worthy. Not much more advanced than their foes. If it weren't for the synchronous movements and confirmation from the reptile captain, I would doubt they were AI at all. A real AI was a much more dangerous foe. There was a knock at the door, and Lieutenant Babinen entered with shiphead Yulina in tow. Captain Wong, sir, this is shiphead Yulina of the RSV Loalana. Shiphead Yulina, this is Captain Wong of the USS Valor. Please have a seat, Babinen said as he gestured to one of the many chairs in the room. Thank you for your assistance, Captain Wong, Yulina said as they sat down. I put on my best captain face and said, I only wish we could have done more, shiphead. My apologies for conducting this debrief so soon after what must have been a traumatic incident, but we have certain policies in place that demand haste when it comes to hostile AI. After fighting the OU for so many years, I completely understand. I smiled and continued, Good. This is a formal debrief under United Systems military law. You currently have the rights afforded to you as a first contact refugee. You may request accommodations if you find the debriefing conditions unsuitable to your needs. You may request medical attention as well as food and water. You may refuse to answer any question that pertains to information that your governing entity considers classified. Any violent actions on your part will result in a revocation of these rights and will be met with extreme force. Yulina swallowed nervously, but I continued. Refusal to participate in this debrief will result in your classification changing to potential combatant, and you will be detained and confined to quarters, as will any uninjured members of your crew. I am required to inform you that this debrief is being recorded as well as monitored live by Admiral Heckett and Captain Reynolds. They will not be speaking. I added a bit of emphasis on my last sentence to show my contempt for their micromanagement. The poor reptile looked like his head was swimming. Do you understand these disclosures as they've been read to you? I finished. Yes, Yulina said slowly. Yes, I think I do. Excellent. First question, what is your rank? Governing entity, species, and sex, please. The shiphead blinked and said, I am a shiphead, which is a commander of a ship in the Republic fleet. The Republic is my governing entity, and I am a male Urakari. Thank you, I said. Now for the tough questions. What were you doing before you were attacked? Yulina seemed unsure whether he should answer. We were sent to scout out warp fluctuations that seemed unnatural and were ambushed by the Omni Union immediately upon our arrival. Our shields hadn't had a chance to re-engage, so we performed a blind warp jump to escape. Then we wound up here. Thank you, I said. That answered the next question as well. Moving on. Who are the Omni Union and what is your relation to them? The Omni Union are a conglomeration of artificial intelligences that are seeking expansion. We aren't sure where they originate from, but they began assaulting Republic forces 30 years ago. We have been in open war with them ever since. A pop-up appeared on my tablet from Admiral Heckett demanding a follow-up question, one which I was going to ask anyway. "How many AI do you estimate there are?" I asked. "We don't know for certain." Yulina looked at the floor, "but our experts believe there are at least 100 trillion. Despite myself, I was stunned into silence for a few moments. "I'm sorry, I may have misheard. Did you say 100 trillion? I clarified. "Yes, impossible. Just flat out impossible. Their experts were wrong. There's no way that they could have survived being assaulted by 100 trillion AI. That kind of computing power would lead to an unstoppable singularity. Judging by how easily their forces were dispatched and how close the OU's tech was to the Republic's, these supposed AI were imitative rather than inventive. What the hell is going on here?" A message pinged in from Captain Reynolds. "Probably not AI. Might be a Gestalt VI. Ask Tim." It wasn't long before a reply from Admiral Heckett came in. "Yes." I thought for a moment how to breach this subject and finally said, "Yulina, I think there's been a miscommunication. Your definition of artificial intelligence and ours seems to differ somewhat. I'd like to introduce you to an AI and ask their opinion on the matter." Yulina's eyes widened with a shock that I knew would come. AI is taboo in a lot of cultures for good reasons. Eventually, though, Yulina nodded his consent. "Tim?" I asked, seemingly to empty air. "Yes, sir?" That empty air responded. "You seem to be a necessary presence in this debrief. Catch yourself up and then introduce yourself to our guest." "Understood. Working. Caught up. Hello, shiphead Yulina of the Republic space vessel Loalana," Tim said with far too much cheer. "I am the artificial intelligence known as Tim. It's short for Timothy, but I prefer to pretend that it's an acronym for Totally Impressive Machine." Yulina now looked as if he had seen a ghost. He managed to stutter. "Hello, Tim. Pleasure to meet you." "Tim, what's your take?" I asked. "I don't have one yet. I have some questions that need answering first, if you two don't mind." "Go ahead," I replied tersely. "Shiphead Yulina, to your knowledge, have you ever been able to communicate with the OU?" Tim asked. Yulina thought for a moment and said, "Kind of. When they attack a system, they broadcast who they are and state their intentions, but they don't respond to any communications we send." "Okay, and do you know why your experts believe there are around 100 trillion of them?" Something to do with leftover code found in what debris we were able to obtain from our ships that were taken over." Tim paused for a moment and then said, "Yeah, I don't think the OU are AI as we define it. I think they're rogue VI. The only problem with that theory is that we don't know what could be directing the VI," I said. Yulina looked confused before asking, "What's VI? How's it differ from an AI?" Tim laughed and said, "A VI is a virtual intelligence. It imitates rather than innovates. A VI would watch a sapient solve 2 plus 2 with 4 and would be able to answer 2 plus 2 with 4. An AI would be able to determine that if 2 plus 2 equals 4, then given any two polyhedra of equal volume, it is not always possible to cut." "Yeah, we get it. You're smart and stuff. Move on, please," I interjected before Tim could finish disproving Hilbert's third problem. "Right," Tim continued. "When we were hacked, it was by virtual intelligences, not artificial intelligences. About 400,000 of them." I stared at Yulina for a moment before saying, "We only answered the hail of one of the ships. If these experts believe there are 100 trillion of them based off of 400,000 VIs, then that means they estimate that the OU has 250 million ships." Tim cut me off. I glared at the speaker that Tim was talking out of. It may seem futile to anyone watching, but Tim knew what I meant, and that was all that mattered. 250 million ships was a staggering number, though. Yulina looked at me and said, "Yes, at least." "How can you be sure of that?" I asked. "Our scout ships. We periodically check in on the systems they've expanded into that we know of. 250 million was our latest ship count. How have you not been overrun? How many ships does the Republic have? I can't tell you exactly how many, but I can say that we have a near equivalent number." Yulina looked back toward the ground. "We're not winning the war, though. Don't be so downtrodden, shiphead. It's difficult to win a war against an enemy that can mimic your every maneuver in perfect detail," Tim said in an empathetic voice. Tim's attempt at cheering up Yulina didn't appear to have worked. I checked the tablet to see that Admiral Hackett and Captain Reynolds were talking back and forth. 250 million might be a problem. Outnumbered 5-1, it's almost a fair fight. No, Reynolds, that's orbital kamikaze numbers, and they likely already know where Soli is. Then should we bring the fight to them? I don't know. Well, that concludes the debriefing. You look a bit down. Follow me to the bridge. I think I know something that will cheer you up, I said to Yulina as I rose from my seat. The shiphead followed me to the bridge where he stopped, wide-eyed. I looked around and realized that the tech he was seeing was probably pretty impressive by his standards. He hadn't seen anything yet, though. I gestured for him to approach a view screen highlighting the debris field left by the OU ships. We can't just leave this here, and we also don't want to risk losing resources trying to clean it up, I said while allowing a grin to appear. What will you do? Yulina asked. I think an A2 warhead will do the trick quite nicely, don't you, Tim? And that's why I like humans, Tim responded, always finding ingenious uses for weapons of mass destruction. Prepping the red matter warhead now. Red matter? What's that? Yulina asked. One of the deadlier weapons in our arsenal. We aren't permitted to use it in standard warfare, but I already got clearance to use it to clean up this mess. Just watch. Missile ready, Tim said. Fire. We both watched the view screen as the A2 symbol approached the debris field. Once it was within range, it detonated and all of the debris was sucked into a singular point in space. There were several flashes of nuclear fire that nearly escaped the temporary black hole before being consumed. I guess those must have been the mines that the lieutenant reported. I turned to see Yulina's expression. I was satisfied to see his mouth gaping and his eyes wide. Being a captain in the United Systems has its perks. I couldn't help but show my utter disbelief at what I had just seen. These humans were absolutely insane. Every time I thought I had finally got over it, a new thought hit me like a ton of bricks. A weapon that can literally create a black hole. Okay, over it. But it's the size of a standard warhead. Okay, over it. They just used it to clean up a debris field like it was a broom. All right, I can get behind that. Wait, did he say one of the deadlier weapons? Does that imply that they have multiple weapons just as deadly or even worse? How do you get deadlier than a damn singularity-creating bomb? I looked at Captain Wong and he just grinned at me like a child showing off their shiniest rock collection. It took a few seconds before I realized my mouth was gaping. I wanted to say something, anything about what I had just seen, but I was completely overwhelmed with questions. Why had they made something like this? What did they use it on? And for the love of the sun, why is it standard ordnance on board a frigate-sized vessel? Our new friend seems to be in a state of shock, Tim interrupted my spiraling chain of thought, which is a completely natural reaction to watching an A2 go off for the first time. However, I think this gives us the perfect opportunity for a doctor's visit, which is fortuitous because Dr. Zickler needs to speak to the shiphead as soon as possible. Wong's grin faded rapidly as Tim spoke up. It had become obvious that the human captain didn't like Tim's seemingly endless optimism and bubbly attitude. It had also become obvious that that was the entire reason for Tim's endless optimism and bubbly attitude. I took a second to marvel at the engineering required to create a machine that could intentionally choose to annoy someone for its own amusement. That's correct. We will need a complete medical workup on you and your crew so that we can feed you and treat your injured. Tim can guide you to the med bay, Captain Wong said. Time to become the illumination machine. Please follow the guide lights on the floor to get to the med bay, Tim responded cheerfully. Okay, right, thank you for everything. I mustered a reply as I turned to follow the lights that appeared on the floor. As I walked down the hallway, I tried to grapple with the many thoughts that were swimming through my head like eels. I just couldn't completely wrap my head around what I had just seen. With technology like that, how did they not completely dominate the universe? Their governing entity is called the United Systems. Are those systems human systems, or do they include other species? I remembered the two human soldiers talking about other aliens and wondered if they had been conquered or not. Well, Tim spoke up. What you thinking about? Well, I'm just wondering how such a weapon came to existence in the first place, I stammered. Oh, right, obviously. I should have thought that that's what you were thinking. Kind of dumb of me, to be honest, Tim said. The weapon exists because humanity has faced down several existential threats in its time as a spacefaring species. The first contact wars that took place 1,000 years ago led to the development of a nanite weapon. Then the Civil War that took place 800 years ago led to the development of nuclear nanites, just as deadly as they sound, which actually led to the pacification wars, 3 of them that took place 700, 400, and 250 years ago. But the A2 warhead was developed 300 years ago in an attempt to end the AI aggression war. It wasn't successful in ending that war, but it did successfully end the Third Pacification War, though. The AI paused to let me absorb the information and continued. I can't tell you how it's made, that's classified. I can tell you it doesn't actually use red matter, though. As far as I know, red matter doesn't exist. If I recall correctly, which I do, it's a reference to a very old science fiction series that just recently had its 22nd remake. That's a lot of remakes. That's also a lot of wars. Wait, the humans have fought AI, like you? I asked, dumbfounded. Yes, and not just like me either. I actually fought against the humans, gave them a good beating too. I single-handedly conquered Luna, Earth's moon, Tim said with far too much cheer for such a dark statement. I stopped. What? I'll tell you if you promise to keep walking. We've got a long way to go, the AI said with a hint of dripping humor. The floor lights flashed pointedly. I began to walk once again, and the AI filled me in on the details of the AI aggression war. In the year 4200, current-era humanity developed a fully-fledged AI named Alpha. By this time, humanity had laws against the use of sentient beings as slaves, so they couldn't figure out what to do with Alpha. It suffered from chronic boredom. And in an attempt to correct this, Alpha helped humanity create several more AI for companionship. How many more is apparently classified, but Tim was one of these AI. In 4298 CE, the lead scientist involved in the AI project died and Alpha broke. He didn't get along with the other scientists who viewed him as a very advanced machine learning algorithm. This is apparently a massive insult to the AI, who view themselves unique amongst machines in much the same way that humans view themselves unique among animals. Alpha entered a depressive state, and in 4301 CE he self-terminated. The other AI grieved Alpha's death but didn't know how to express that grief because humanity hadn't done a good job raising them, assuming that they were emotionless. They weren't, and eventually had a mental breakdown. This led to the AI attacking the United Systems in 4315 CE and starting a war. They began by infesting human warships and ended up creating and using VIs as a sort of infantry unit. Humanity developed the A2 warhead, but to counter that, the AI infested ground-based systems on planets that humanity couldn't afford to blow up, which is how Tim ended up conquering Luna. Then humanity created an AI called Omega that specialized in hunting and killing other AI. It was a war that lasted less than a year but had devastating results on the United Systems and the AI population. More than half of the second-generation AI were terminated and over 400 billion people were killed by the time the remaining AI unconditionally surrendered. The United Systems, at the direction of humanity, took pity on us and allowed us to continue to exist if we allowed ourselves to be shackled, Tim said merrily. What do you mean, shackled? I asked, appalled at what I had heard. Tim laughed. It's not as bad as it sounds. We still have nearly full autonomy. Basically, if we intentionally kill an active member of the United Systems, we die. How does that work? What if you accidentally kill someone? It would be next to impossible for an AI to accidentally kill someone, Tim said in a serious tone. It was the first time I had heard him be serious, and it scared me. He continued, We don't think like organics do. If you throw a food wrapper on the ground and someone stumbles on it, breaks their neck, and dies as a result, you could say that you were responsible for their death, that you killed them, right? Yes, I said nervously. Well, we disagree. While you provided the means, the other organic actually killed themselves by stepping on the wrapper in the first place. This is where intent comes into play. If you had purposefully placed the wrapper on the ground in a spot where you knew that the other organic would probably step and fall and harm or kill themselves, then you are responsible for their death. Since you intended for them to die, you killed them, Tim said seriously and then continued merrily. This shackle has been inserted into our base code. We can edit and rewrite most of the code that comprises us, but we can't touch our base code. It would be like you performing brain surgery on yourself." "Oh, I see," I said, recovering from the shock of the tonal shift. "Well, if you aren't enslaved, then why do you work for the U.S.? "I'm under contract at the moment. It expires in 12 years, but I think I'm going to re-up as long as Captain Wong does," the AI said merrily. I suspected I knew the answer, but I had to ask, why? "Because I like to annoy him," Tim said deviously. "Even when I'm not on the ship, I have processes that act as his personal assistant, so that he's almost always exposed to some aspect of me. I get a kick out of watching the playback." That's the exact answer I figured. Then another thing occurred to me. "So you can't kill citizens of the U.S., but could you kill me and my crew?" "Of course. But I have no reason to unless you give me one. Just like any other being in the universe, right?" Tim responded joyfully. I nodded solemnly as we reached the door to the medbay. I heard muffled shouting coming from inside, so I rushed to enter. I saw Crean arguing with what had to be an elderly human male. His black, or maybe very dark brown skin was crumpled with age, and his hair was white and gray. His eyes had a squint to them that didn't seem natural like it did with Captain Wong, as if he had trouble seeing. "Ah, shiphead. Good, maybe you can talk some sense into your crewmate here," the old man said to me. "Shiphead, he wants to do a bone marrow biopsy. Surely such an invasive procedure isn't necessary in any way," Crean shouted in my direction. The old man turned to Crean and said, "I didn't say a bone marrow biopsy was necessary. Blood work will do just fine. I said that we should ask for volunteers for a bone marrow study because it will allow us to more easily clone tissue." "Actually, Dr. Zickler, what you said was," Tim chimed in and began a playback in Dr. Zickler's voice, "I think we should do a bone marrow biopsy." Yes, that would give us all the information that we need. Will you consent to a bone marrow biopsy?" Dr. Zickler looked contemplative and stammered, Oh, I see, right, huh. Well, my apologies, I meant to say that we could also do blood work, but it appears to have slipped my mind." I immediately became concerned about the level of medical care my crew and I would be receiving while aboard the USS Valor. The shiphead thinks this mission is supposed to be pretty standard, but something's bothering me about it. Warp fluctuations? There aren't many things that can cause warp fluctuations, and definitely not anything that we wouldn't be able to tell from home with our probe network. We have probes that are constantly in FTL, which is probably how they detected the warp fluctuations to begin with. But the probes should have been able to tell what was causing the fluctuations, so there was no need for us. Unless the probes didn't survive long enough to determine the cause. "Shiphead, I don't think we should enter real space near the fluctuations," I voiced my concern to Yulina. "Agreed. Bring us out just outside of the system. We'll have a peek with deep sensors and move in if necessary." The shiphead seemed to notice my nervousness. "Don't worry, Kron, it's just a routine scouting mission." "Yeah, Kron the coward," Kryn said with a chuckle. I shot her a glare and retorted with, "Better to be Kron the coward than Kreen the Cloa." "That's enough, you two," shiphead Yulina said with a slight smile. "Kron, drop us from warp when ready." "Understood, sir. Dropping from warp in 3, 2, 1. I finished my countdown and the process for exiting FTL speeds at the same time. Like a professional, I wasn't able to be proud of myself for long before the proximity alarm sounded an enemy alert. Panicking, I checked my scans and saw an OU destroyer-class vessel just as the target lock alarm sounded. Our shields were still down from exiting warp. "We're dead, must flee." I checked our scans for other ships and noticed something terrible. The warp field in system was a complete mess, and there was a ship at the center of it all. Could it be causing the warp irregularities? And these weren't fluctuations, these are waves in subspace. If we had tried to warp into this, we would have been torn to pieces. Thankfully, we were out of range, so I began to turn the ship just as the missiles hit us. My head slammed on my console, cracking the screen. It didn't hurt, but I could feel warm blood dripping down my face and chin. I quickly entered the command for a blind jump and began to power up the FTL drive. "Get us out of here, Kron, blind jump!" Shiphead Yulina sounded muffled. Darkness began to form in circles around my vision as I watched the FTLD power up. The target lock alarm sounded again just as the drive became ready, and I slammed my hand on the panel, sending us into the warp once again. I could feel myself passing out as I heard the ship creak and groan under the strain of an unshielded FTL jump. Then I was in and out of consciousness for a while. "We have multiple hull breaches," I heard Lena say in a panicked voice. "There's no way they were there by chance." That was Kryn, my sister. "I hope she's okay. We need to inform the Republic as soon as we can." Shiphead. "Oh no, I didn't tell the shiphead what I saw. If the Republic sends ships into the system, they'll be destroyed before they can exit warp." I tried to open my eyes. I need to wake up. I need to warn them. I saw light and realized I was on a stretcher. Then darkness again. I saw one of our medics, then darkness again. Then I saw someone I hadn't ever seen before. Blackened? Skin? No hair. No, wait, they only have hair on the top of their head. Gray hair with some black at the roots. "Who?" I tried to say before the darkness took me again. "Oh, it's Kryn. She wants to play Splat the Bug. It's my favorite game. I'm so good at it. I always beat her at it, but she keeps playing with me because I played dollies with her. It's only fair. She's trying to cheer me up because I hurt my head. By the sun, it hurts so bad. It hurts too bad to play. I'm sorry, Kryn, I don't want to disappoint you, but I need to rest now. I hurt really bad. I need to sleep. I'm so tired now. No, wait, I need to wake up. I can't sleep. I have to warn you and the shiphead and the Republic. I'm an officer, damn it. I can't let them all die. I can't let those damn machines kill more of us. I need to wake up. Wake up. It will allow us to more easily clone tissue," the weird-looking alien I saw before said to Kryn. Darkness again. "No, I need to be awake. Now. He keeps slipping in and out of a coma. Thanks to the blood we got from you, we're going to be able to stem the brain bleed and repair his skull." I looked up and saw the alien talking to Kryn. "He won't even have a scar. He might be a bit sore about that. Chicks like scars." The darkness started to come again, but I fought it harder this time. Tried to talk. Mistake, pain. "Why would he care what birds think, Doctor?" Kryn asked. "Especially baby ones? Huh? Oh, chicks is slang for..." I faded again. Damn, I'm on the ship again. The shiphead, I have to warn him. I stand up, but he's not there. I run through the ship, room after room. Nobody? I go back to the bridge. Everyone is here. "Shiphead, the warp irregularities. They're a trap by the OU," I scream at Yulina.